All right, so now we're gonna get into the meat of this stream, which is the help system. I always find it very interesting, being someone who works on the PowerShell team. I like go out there and I'll see what people's like biggest gripes with PowerShell are, and I've heard some folks say that it's not a very discoverable language, and I'm always kind of shocked that people feel that way. Because I actually find it to be one of the most discoverable languages out there. And a lot of that has to do with the help system that I'm about to show off. So for those of you who are familiar with like Linux and that environment, you typically use a command called man to see the man pages for a particular command, right? So as an example, I know I am in PowerShell here. In fact, just to prove it to you, I'll start PowerShell with no profile. I actually run a like daily build of PowerShell just because I'm wanting to beta test our own stuff. But whatever version of PowerShell you have is totally fine. But on Linux, there's a man command. And so I can actually type man and then, I don't know, what's a good one? Cat should be, yeah. And this is gonna tell me everything about this command in Linux. And it's actually quite good. But PowerShell has its own kind of concept for PowerShell commands. And that comes in a few different flavors. Let's see what Darkin says. My 2 cents, the discoverable angle is not to do with discoverable, but to do with familiarity. Right. Exactly. Typically, people just don't know about how to discover commands and how to use PowerShell. And that's why I wanted to focus this stream on the help system, because this chapter alone gives you a solid foundation for learning just about anything in PowerShell. Because once you know how to get help, then you're golden from there. Let's go through this chapter really quick. I'm just gonna kind of skim it because, you know, it wouldn't be really fun if I just sat here and was just like reading the text. But I want to highlight a couple things. So in PowerShell, the man equivalent is a command that's called get help. And it looks like this, get help, right? This is a command that you can run within PowerShell. And in fact, what this will do is this will give me help on any particular command that I want to get help on. So, for example, and I think this is a pretty meta example, I'm going to call get help, and I'm going to put get help next to it. And what this is going to give me is the information, much like we saw on the man page, but it's going to give me the information on this particular command that I can run here. So it gives me the synopsis, which says displays information about PowerShell commands and concepts, and a bunch of different syntaxes for it. And don't worry about the syntaxes right now. But it just gives you a sense for how you can use this particular command. I probably should start by talking about what a command is and kind of the anatomy of what one looks like. So we saw that I could call get help, and I could pass in get help as a parameter to this command, right? But what is that actually doing? So each command, as you could see based on the syntax here. Let's look at this one really quick. It looks like a pretty complicated diagram here. But once you kind of understand how to read this, it makes sense. So each command has a certain syntax to it. A command can have multiple different parameters that you pass into a command that changes its behavior. So in this case, I called get help, and I passed in get help as the first parameter. I could pass in something else, like, I don't know, something else like get command is another command in PowerShell, and that will give me the results based on get command. So parameters, as you can see here, can be passed in like this, where you just like pass this parameter in right next to the original command that you're running, or you can name the parameter. And so this is what we're gonna see. Or let me go back up to the get help example up here. Yeah, this first part, ignore the rest, just look at this part right here. So it says get help, and then in brackets we have -name, and then we have string here. So what this is saying, the brackets are things that are optional. But in this case, we have a -name here. And what does that mean? So another way that we can write our original get help command, get help, this command, is that we can say what it is. Oh, you know what? Let me go back to my, yeah, there we go. This is my custom prompt that will help us see what I'm trying to type here. There we go. All right. So now I just ran get help -name get help, and we got the same result. And that's because the -name here is optional. You can specify it if you'd like, but you don't necessarily have to. And so there's a lot more to this get help command, and we're going to look at that in a little bit. But this particular parameter -name supports the ability to do a whole bunch of different things. For example, let's say that I like, gosh, I'm trying to remember a particular command, but I don't remember exactly what the name of it is. And I think that it starts with like, it has the word command in the name, but I don't remember what the first part of it is. So if I use a star here, I'll actually get the result in a nice little list here of the commands that have the word command in them, or that meet this particular description here. And the star basically says, listen, it's what's called a wild card, and it just says like, listen, I know that there could be anything before this text, so just give me the results based on that. And you see I've got a whole bunch of different commands here. And from there I can say, okay, I really wanted to look at measure command. So now I can go ahead and look at measure command. And again, you'll notice that this time I won't specify the name since that's optional. And so that's how I would get that. So that's just, there are so many ways to discover things in PowerShell, but that is a very strong way to do that. So if I just do about here, and I'll do star, I'll see all the different about topics that I have. And these are just less about helping on getting help on particular commands and more of just like general concepts. So like, for example, let's see, what's a good one? Let's see, variables. That's a good one. Get help about variables. variables. There we go. And this gives you just a ton of docs on variables. And also something that I should call out is you'll notice that like when I run this, I just get like a bunch of text. And that's because I'm using get help here. But there's also another command that's just help. And if I run help with the same about variables, now it has pages to it. So now I can like scroll much more easily. And that's because it uses the less executable under the hood. So it's a little bit easier to see help and that sort of things. About topics are definitely your friend, and it's very easy to find them. Just run get help and then about star, like that. And there's tons. Let's see what else. Also, we're gonna stick to talking about get help for the time being. When you first install PowerShell, you might be seeing some different things than I am. And the reason why is because the help documentation doesn't usually ship with PowerShell. You have to update the help in order to get the latest documentation. In order to do that, you run a command called update help. I know. Didn't think it was going to be that, did you? And I guess I can go ahead and run this. I don't think really anything has changed, but and you might get a couple different errors here, but this error is just saying that these particular modules didn't have any help associated with them. So that's totally fine. But by running this, it'll try to update as many things as it possibly can, so you'll get the latest help. But yes, don't be afraid if you happen to see some red text. It did work for the ones that it could find. So that's updating help. I want to go back to the get help and talk about a couple of other parameters that you can specify when getting extra details. So let's go back to the get help for measure command. And we see that it's like, measure the time it takes to run script blocks and commandlets. It gives us the syntax, nice description, but I think we're looking for something more. We're looking for examples. And if you look in the remarks, there's a section that says to see the examples, type get help measure command examples. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me check the chat really quick. Question, does the book include an explanation of the philosophy behind PowerShell? Just wondering for someone who's used to other shells like Bash or Z shell, what does PowerShell bring to the table? No need to answer here, was just wondering. That's a good question. I'm pretty sure the book does cover this because it is a very critical like part of PowerShell. And Dargon has answered it quite well in as short as possible, which is objects versus strings. And if I have time, I'll try to get into that. But I believe that's covered in like chapter 8 of the book. The gist there is that rather than commands outputting strings, raw text, they actually output objects. And the reason why, and if I've already scared you, don't just tune me out for a quick second. And the reason why is because PowerShell is built on top of .NET and has access to all of the .NET objects right at the shell. But don't worry about that if you don't know what I'm talking about. We're focusing on getting help at the moment. So, examples. And so when I run get help with that -examples parameter, now we see I can get some examples here about how this works. So Yeah, so here's like a few different examples that we have to use here. There's a whole bunch of other kinds of additional parameters that we can specify here. I guess, you know, for what it's worth, parameter order doesn't really matter. So I could put examples here and then put measure command. Doesn't matter which way I go. But one thing that I do like is there's an online option. And this is actually going to open up my browser and bring you right to the documentation on docs.microsoft.com for that particular command if it exists. Naturally, for like random modules that you bring into PowerShell, they might not have the same documentation space, but any built-in commands for PowerShell, you'll have nice documentation on those. And you could see just the references here on the left side. There's just a ton of commands that you can use. I should also mention a quick way to type really quickly in PowerShell, and that's the power of the tab button, or the tab button on your keyboard. It's just like, if you hit tab just about anywhere, you'll get some sort of tab completion. So in this case, I hit tab next to get help here, and it says I have 1,477 possibilities. And that's basically, I'll hit yes, sure, why not? These are like all of the commands and all of the about topics. It's all very like discoverable. So remember I used about before. I hit about, hit tab, 121 opportunities here. Maybe I'll hit P, what else? Yeah, W, S, H. And I'm just like typing a character, hitting tab, typing a character, hitting tab. That works with like command names. So I'll hit get-H, hit tab, and see the options there. All right, so help, hit dash. This is one of the best ones, is you hit dash, which is the start of a parameter, and then you hit tab a couple times, and you'll see all the parameter options. So we know about name, it's optional. And even at the parameter value level, so right here, if I do like measure, that works too. And then hit dash again, and I get my options here. And I could see like full documentation. Yeah, just tab is just the absolute best. Specifying the dash full parameter on get help is cool because it gives you parameter information as well, each of these. And I remember I mentioned that PowerShell is all based on objects, and you could see here that we have a parameter name, and then this is the type that you pass into it. So script block in this case, PS object in this case. But if you're not too familiar with objects as a concept, then don't worry about that. You don't necessarily need to know them at this stage.